So welcome everyone. I'm going to call to order the meeting of the Energy and Climate Action Committee for November 10th. This meeting will be video recorded and broadcast over local access channel 8 and through the town website at www.eastham-ma.gov. So we have a quorum. We are expecting a few more, and we have the guest there, Chris. We're going to address us in a moment. So an interesting agenda tonight. A lot of interesting stuff, and we'll have to get when we get to the part of the climate action plan. We need to talk about how much we want to do there. But anyway, as we get started, we do have a few guests in the room. So in general, guests, please raise your hand to comment. We're going to have a lot of discussion amongst the members today. Let me start with the quote for today, especially since we're discussing the climate action plan. This is from Catherine Hayhoe. Real hope involves being convinced there's a better future possible if we do everything we can to get there. And the science shows that the solutions are at hand. Therefore, our choices matter. So I thought that was appropriate for tonight. Let's go around the room real quickly. We'll do introductions. I'm Tom McNellis.
Mike Sarcioni.
Genevieve Smith.
Roberta Longley.
Harriet Emerson.
Lenny Carr.
Chris Palmer.
Very cynical. John Muggerson. There's two people in the way.
Yeah. Oh, and then waiting. Oh, okay.
Cecilia Buckley.
Martin Chulik with Corleans.
Graduate minutes.
I'm sorry, what your name was?
Martin Chulik.
Hi. Okay. Cecilia, also Orleans. So nice to meet you.
With that, yes, I didn't phone.
All right, and online. Let's start with Shana.
Shana Brogan with the town of Eastham.
Jack.
Jack Hadley, committee volunteer.
John.
Hey, John Boyney, member of the committee.
All right, Olaf.
Olav Hegland, member of the committee.
All right, very good. Good crowd tonight, and lots to talk about, lots of interesting stuff. So let's begin with public comment, and I'm gonna invite Martin and Cece from Orleans to say a word about the Energy Navigator. We'll be getting into hopefully a little bit more detail, maybe in another month or two.
Okay, so Martin Chulik again. I was on the Town of Orleans Energy Climate Action Committee for many years. Then I was on Cape Light Compact Board for 9 years and chaired it for 5 years. I retired from that, and we started a new program called Energy Navigators. I did some research several years ago about Energy Navigator programs being conducted in many communities around the Northeast. And in fact, I found some in the South and elsewhere. Energy Navigator or Energy Coaching Program, as some of you may know it, is where volunteers assemble and have knowledge and training and then work with homeowners or businesses that have questions about energy issues like heat pumps or solar or electric vehicles. This has been can they see me up on there? They can hear me anyway. So this has been really successful.
This thing watches you, so
okay.
you are, I can see you here, you're front center.
So these programs have been very successful all over the place. And I spoke with probably 15 to 20 different directors of these programs to get some of the insights on how they operate. And basically the idea is you get interested volunteers that have some knowledge or background in energy related topics. You provide training and resources, and most of the time they're doing home visits and going out and talking to people that want to have some knowledge so they can make decisions. And this is the bottom line, that anyone that is interested in doing a better job with their home energy or business energy, first thing they gotta do before they can make a decision is get good information. So I looked at it, I used to work for the cooperative extension. And I looked at this as the master gardener model of training volunteers to go out and work with individuals. So we recruited 8 people in the town of Orleans right now. And we started the program this past summer. And I'll let Cece talk about it. But I also wanted to mention that we pushed this with Cape Light Compact. And we got it approved, if you will, informally, that Orleans and maybe Eastham would do a pilot project with energy coaching. And then hopefully with success, then it could be expanded across the Cape and Martha's Vineyard with the other Cape Light compact communities. So we're at very early stages. We've had some success as far as getting some folks in Orleans recruited. And I'll let Cece talk about what we've been doing to date.
Okay, thank you, Martin. Yeah, we hit the ground running, I would say this summer at the Orleans Farmers Market. Very much as you have spent some time at the farmers market talking with people. What we were interested in is finding out what questions were out there, because everybody does have a question about heat pump or EV or. There isn't always a place to take that question and get information so that you have that information when you need to make a decision in the middle of winter or some other emergency. So for us this summer, we were at the market for 12 weeks. We saw, I'm gonna say about 160 people and got a feel for where we could provide more services by presenting some topics, being more visible around topics where there was definitely a need. Where we are now, we've got 2 more weeks at the farmers market. We had a booth, people would stop by, they would chat, we would give them a card and a bag from Cape Light Compact. So when they went home, in the bag, there's a way to reach us. We have a website, we have a phone number. We're looking now at a partnership with the hardware store in the middle of Orleans. And we'll be there on Saturdays for 2 hours at a time. Again, trying to get a sense of the market out there of the needs, the topics that people want to know more about. Long term, and sooner than long term, we're really hoping to have enough of a core group and a vision we're working toward so that we aren't always out there hoping to meet people and hand them a card and build a relationship. We're looking at more of a neighborhood approach where we would have a base through which neighbors could help neighbors, connect people with other people whom they don't necessarily know, but who are right around the corner and are already experienced using a particular energy angle to make their lives healthier. Is that about it?
Thank you. And I know we had talked about maybe doing a fuller session discussion about it today, but I think the thought was we'll have something in maybe beginning of the year, is that what we're thinking? And some discussions between here and then on how to organize. So if anyone else is interested in participating in those discussions, I think you have some dates that you're thinking of. We can get that out to everyone, right? I think anyone would be welcome to come in and participate.
Right.
It's important, I think, to be clear that we will provide training for people so that you don't have to be a rocket scientist to begin working with this group of energy coaches. The people we have are just very interested in connecting with neighbors, connecting neighbors. So.
And we did also want to share that Cape Light Compact had an energy coach. That's turned over. But we use that individual to help us get up to speed. And we're still in touch with people at Cape Light Compact. And I guess I understand they're hiring a new energy coach there. Or have it, I,
Yeah, already good question.
Yeah.
Who is training you, you volunteers, who is training you?
well, we've relied on Mike and Tom to some extent. We're now having a training hopefully next week with someone that'll come in from the community. A vendor. But it will also be Cape Light Compact or other people that we, tap into. It's open-ended.
Very, very exciting. So yeah, we look forward to having more discussion.
Great, okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for coming.
But
Right, next up, Shana. Turn it over to you for town updates.
Okay, so our EVIP grant, which is a replacement of the chargers at the library and the town hall, we're in communications with DEP. So they're reviewing the application. They had a couple of questions which we responded to. So now we're just waiting to hear back. And then for the fast charging stations at town hall, which would be new, we had a meeting with DOT and they said that the site is favorable in terms of the criteria that they set for siting the stations. But they're installing one in Barnstable at this time. So they kind of wanted to see how that goes before they go forward with looking at the town's proposal. And then they said that they would be back in touch with us over the winter.
So that's state DOT, I assume.
Yes. Yep, it was the state DOT.
And based on what you're saying, it sounds like it's still in play. It hasn't been terminated due to federal funding.
No, it hasn't been terminated. They're trying to utilize the funding. It's very expensive. It's more expensive than they thought based off of the funding that they've been allocated. But so they want to see how this station installation in Barnstable goes in regards to the costs and any unanticipated costs that come up. And that's why they said they'd follow back up with us in the winter and see what next steps we can take with it. So it wasn't a no, so that's positive. And then I think there was some questions around the fire department HVAC system, which recently with Green Communities funding had been upgraded. And so they just had an issue with, I guess the thermostats were older style or something. So they have to upgrade the thermostats in addition to the HVAC system, and that should fix it. And then the climate leader application is moving forward. We're still getting the pieces together, and we have the select board reviewing it on November 17th.
And November 17th will be, from what I understand, a public comment for both the ZEV first policy and the decarb roadmap. Is that correct? Is that still in play?
Yes. Yep. So they'll be voting on the policy, the decarbonization roadmap, and to move forward with the application itself.
And as a public comment period, I think everyone here is welcome to come and voice your support or other comments as to those policies. So that's on the 17th.
Shane, I have a question.
Mhm.
So none of the contractors that bid on the fire department HVAC system upgrade to heat pump said anything about needing new thermostats?
So it wasn't a bid because we did it through Rise Engineering. So they do their own vendor selection, I guess.
Okay.
And they didn't say anything about needing new thermostats. It's only like, I mean, compared to the size of the rest of the project, it was about $5,000 to upgrade all of the thermostats. So it's not a huge change in the scope of work, but
No, it's just what bothers me is that somebody didn't note this from day one,
Yeah,
even
yeah.
during the design or concept phase, that was gonna have to happen, so.
I can't imagine how they signed off on the project called it complete without thermostat working. It's a little strange.
Okay, thank you.
sure.
Okay. Anything else, Shana?
Nope, that's it.
All right, thank you. Next up, minutes of October 20th.
Motion to approve the minutes from
Yeah.
October 20th.
Hopefully you've all seen, thank you, yeah, you've all seen the minutes, had a chance to take a look. Any questions before we vote on the,
Second.
do you have a second? All right, all in favor?
Yes.
Any opposed? John, which way was your vote? That was an up, okay, motion approved, unanimously. All right, and next up, the pleasure of introducing Chris Palmer, who is the Truro Sustainability Manager, I think is the correct term, right?
Not quite, but
Not quite?
climate action coordinator.
Okay.
Zero out of 3 words, right? But that's okay.
Oh, all right, and
Say bye.
I'll say at the visit of Melissa Hoffer, who's our chief climate
Climate chief.
yeah, climate chief, I've been so pleased trying, yeah, the climate chief for the governor. She was here a couple weeks ago in Wellfleet and held a session there, a public session, and she called Chris out specifically, gave you kudos for the work that you're doing. So Chris has agreed to come in and introduce himself and talk a little bit about what a sustainability climate coordinator does. We are very interested in that type of, the need for that type of a position here in Eastham. And I think also I'll say generally interested in the types of collaboration projects you've been thinking about and maybe inviting us to participate in.
Waiting person.
Okay, so,
Okay, thanks.
So sure, I can start. Thank you for inviting me to be here. Yeah, my name is Chris Palmer. A little bit about me first. I live in Truro. I come from England though, which is why I sound like this. But I met a girl, an American girl. So I moved to America. Now I live here, which is kind of weird. And we have a little baby who's 2 years old, who had a plan. I was going to come here. They were going to go to the Eastham Library, hang out there because you don't come to Eastham Library that much, and then come back and pick me up and go, but Eastham Library closes at 4. So they're in Wellfleet Library, which is a little less snazzy, but a little less leaky maybe.
That's right.
So
Okay.
but they don't have a nice turtle
they have a nice little.
or terrapin.
So yeah, I started this job in Truro as the climate action coordinator in January. It is about 25 hours a week, goes up and down sometimes depending on money and how much stuff there is to do. Turns out, although there's always a ton of stuff to do, because it's just, my job description is essentially get Truro to net zero by 2050, 2040 ideally, and save Truro from the climate apocalypse. It's like just this huge job. We're trying to pass a whole government approach plan right now to get every department to think about climate and what they're doing, which just means now every department is also my job. So it's kind of sprawling, but engaging. What I do in my job is, I guess really the number one thing is that pretty much all the staff in Truro think that climate change is important. That's not really an issue. Nearly everyone is like, yes, climate is an important thing, but probably nobody, and this is true in the general public, you would find it's their number one issue, right? It's usually number 3 or number 5 or number 7 or something, because at the top is maybe housing affordability or water or like traffic on Route 6 is too bad or whatever it is. All these other issues that are also important and are often quite more, immediate and direct. And climate is number 3 or number 5 or something. And so in Truro, the staff people all sort of had climate, not even in their job description, but kind of under their wing, but they had so much other stuff to do all the time that it was hard to ever get to the climate-y stuff because their job descriptions are just as sprawling as mine. So it's really helpful to have someone in town hall whose number one job is to think about climate and to get in people's pockets, because people are receptive, people want to make climate stuff happen, we just don't have time to do it. The other thing that afflicted Truro and has afflicted some other committees I've talked to is that, so I spent 6 years as a volunteer manager for 350 Portland. And so I love volunteers, love committees. If a committee doesn't have, so in Truro, we didn't have a point person who was their like main person who thinks about climate in the town, then the committee would sit and figure out lots of great ideas and then have a question. And then they send it to town hall, so whoever their contact might be. And sometimes it's not clear who the contact is. And then it would take 3 weeks for that person to get back to them. Or, you know, you're not sure how much to bug them or whatever, because that person's got 100 things to do. And that slows everything down. And a lot of what my job is that we have actually two great committees. We have a climate action committee and an energy committee, which has like 12 people, which is as many people as you have here. And they're all working really hard. And then they have a little question that's kind of a roadblock, or they need a little approval about doing a certain thing, or they need a little bit of budget line item to buy some flyers or whatever. Before that would just kind of get stuck. And we'd have to wait for the next meeting and the next meeting, and a month would pass and nothing would happen. But now just having a physical presence in town hall means that I can just walk up to the town manager's office. Oh, she's not there. And so I go talk to the DPW director, and just having, because you could get a meeting in someone in the town's calendar 2 weeks from now, you know, and get an hour meeting, and that's fine. But I have a dozen little 5-minute conversations just in the hallways here and there to be like, hey, we're working on this idea. What do you think? Yes or no? Can we get this? Can we move forward with this? Da, da, da. And that moves things forward so much more. Those are my two big pictures of why having staff is important. Yeah. Because then we have these 12 people on the committee. They're each happy to put in 5 hours a week, something like that, you know. So that's 60 hours a week of committee time that I'm using. I'm only probably kind of facilitating with them for maybe 5 hours a week. So I'm really just leveraging that 5 hours and turning it into 60 hours of time. And then the rest of my, because with 25 hours, I can't do all that stuff, right? I need a whole team, and the committee is that team. Other stuff I do, I apply for lots of grants. There's all this money out there to be won if you just have someone, you know, in town hall who can go out and get it. How much money have we got so far? We've got, so I started in January. I get paid about 45 grand a year. We've got so far, because of grants that I've written, $540,000 or something. That's like awarded already in 9 months. And we've got, yeah. We've got another, you know, 1.2 million grants out there in the ether that we're waiting for them to get back to us, all that kind of stuff. Right. There's money out there, and especially because not every town has a climate person yet. It's Truro, Barnstable, and Falmouth have a climate person. And there's kind of someone in Orleans, you know, Kim Grant, who's split between 3 towns. But not everybody has a climate person yet, which means that, you know, say if Eastham got one, you'd be still on the leading edge of towns who have them. And there's less competition for all the money out there. So really, you just need someone who can write those grants and go get that money. It's like every climate person I speak to, they all have a list. This is my list of stuff that I've done for the town, big projects and grants that I've won and everything. Because sometimes you have to talk to voters and prove why you're worth it. Just say why I'm spending this money on this another bureaucrat. And so you talk to anyone, and every single person has raised, like pretty much every year, more money than their salary. It's just a given for these positions. I do lots of planning. We'll talk about the climate action plan that I'm writing. And the last main thing is project managing big projects. So we're trying to get solar on our landfill, finally. We're going to own it ourselves and build it, pay for it ourselves, and use the electricity in interesting ways. We think we can give a lot of it away to low-income people in Truro, because energy costs are just as big as rent and housing costs for the housing affordability stuff. So that's a big project to wrap my head around that no one else really has time to do. I think a lot of other places have leased it because leased their landfills to a company to let them build it, and that's easier for the town, but it's less benefit for the town too. The private company goes and makes all the money. And so having a staff that lets you go to those opportunities. And the last project I'll mention is we got a MVP grant, Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Grant, to make a resilience hub in Truro, to turn our library or our school into a resilience hub, which is part emergency shelter, because our closest one is your high school, which is kind of far in a hurricane and maybe not set up for everybody. And So part emergency shelter, part everyday resilience hub, where we can build food resiliency and energy resiliency and help people apply for federal funds to get, you know, housing assistance and all that kind of stuff. So those are the big picture things in the job description.
Fantastic. Perhaps, yeah,
Can I ask a
discussion.
question? So I read a disturbing article recently. And so the landfill in Truro, is there anything under the fill that's there?
Yeah,
Yeah,
rubbish.
anything with PFAS in it?
We don't think so.
We don't think so.
We don't think so, but then
Okay.
there's some PFAS in a plume nearby that's going, if it's got, we're testing which direction it's going. If it's going this direction, it's from the landfill. If it's going this direction, it's from somewhere else. So maybe.
So how was it that you guys weren't able to convince one person that solar farms don't leach PFAS? And you should go forward with the $5 million project that sounds like it's not going forward. At least that's what I read.
In the independent?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it's going forward tomorrow.
okay, good.
There's lots of we went to the select board to try to get this contract signed. There were all these questions around PFAS. Understandably, PFAS, big deal in Truro. I think we've got most of those questions answered. I think they're mostly not super warranted. Good to ask. Tomorrow there's going to be a vote again.
Good.
You know, perhaps that's another good example of why having someone like you being
Coordinator.
project manager, coordinator, yeah, whatever the term is, you got that resolved pretty quickly compared to normal process. So kudos for that.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, that project needed to happen before the federal tax credits ran out.
Yeah.
And so Churo's moved faster than Churo's ever moved before.
Except, does that have anything to do with this guy named Chris Palmer?
Possibly.
I have a question for you. So there's a climate resiliency playbook that was created recently that we've been tasked to take a look into it. And I noticed that Truro was the only town on the Outer Cape, and indeed for most of the Cape, maybe there were 2 or 3 towns that participated in the development of this resiliency playbook. Was that you that orchestrated that, or did the committee, like, how did that come to be?
Yeah, I don't know. I also read that recently. I opened the playbook recently and saw Truro in that. I don't know who that was, or when that was.
Okay, so you weren't really,
Probably find out all my time, I think.
okay. Okay. And my
I
other,
went to a conference and there's kind of a workshop about it, and it sort of was an audience member in the workshop. Maybe that was it, but so I don't know.
yeah,
But it's the type of thing I would do in my job.
yeah, I would imagine. And then so my next question is, you're like half-time, a little bit more than half-time. Do you feel that that's sufficient for the activities that you're doing? Or if you were full-time, would you be spinning more plates?
Yes, I would get more work done. And also it's perfect for me. I got a little baby at home. My wife works. So it's kind of.
But I'm not thinking just about,
I think
I'm thinking about sort of if Eastham were to adopt a role like this,
Mhm.
is it a half-time role? Is it a full-time role? Is it something that you could share with another town?
Yeah, I think it could easily be a full-time role. My hours were a little bit higher and this budget happened and went lower. They've gone higher since, but I did wonder if I could go work for P-Town for 5 hours a week and just help kind of shepherd their climate action plan or something. I mean, gold standard is every town in the Outer Cape has a full-time climate person. There's plenty of work for all that stuff to happen, loads of benefit. If not, I feel like, yeah, Wellfleet and Eastham could share a person, or Orleans or whoever else. I think a lot of what we do is the same. And so if I spend 75% of the energy kind of learning and figuring out how to do something, and then 25% is getting it over the line, then there's kind of economies of scale, you know, if I just have to do that 25% with Wellfleet and Eastham, rather than a new person doing 75% again. Does that make sense? I think it can be shared, and maybe all these people can talk about it because they have a shared person.
So it's very positive. So thank you for such a positive report, because I think a lot of people will, certainly myself, when there was such a massive reduction in federal funding for clean energy, that is really very frustrating, depressing. So it's great to hear that, things can move forward despite that. And secondly, the sources of funding, are they Massachusetts government, are they private foundations or other organizations? Or without having to list them all individually, what are the main categories of funding that you're able to get grants from?
Yeah, I started my job on January 21st, which was day one of the new administration.
That's right.
And someone on the select board asked me how I felt about that and doing climate work. And I think it's kind of grotesque in some ways, but it's also kind of perfect because nothing's climate wise is happening on the national level, which means everything for the next 4 years is going to be happening on the local level. So it's really our chance to step up, do this work. All the grants that I've got have been from state Massachusetts, like green communities, MVP stuff. My salary is currently just town. I think it's even free cash at the moment. With the plan that we build this solar landfill thing, the revenues from that will pay my salary.
Thank you.
Okay, speaking of the revenue from the solar landfill, you're talking about using some of that not only for maintenance of that facility, but and yourself as project manager, but also giving back to the community. Have you thought about how that might work?
Finance wise?
Yeah, in terms of supporting the, those that are less well off in town on their energy bills or other ways.
Rephrase the question, please.
So my understanding was that there's about 500K per year.
Yeah.
Of which some of that goes to pay debt service, some of that goes to pay, operating expenses and whatnot. But some of that, I think you had talked about the possibility of using some of that for aid to the to less well-off residents.
Basically, how it works is that if you do a community shared solar project, you can get more money from the Massachusetts Smart Solar Program, and you can get more money from the federal tax credits, which are about to go away, but haven't quite gone away yet. Hopefully, we're going to get more money from that. And if we give away a ton of energy or electricity or I guess credits, net metering credits, then we get those higher rates. And the big picture is that Truro, instead of making sort of $6 million in profit, after the debt service and my salary and the maintenance and stuff, 6 million profit over 20 years would be if we just kind of sold it to the highest bidder. But if we gave this money away, we would make $5 million profit as the town, but there would be $2 million worth of I think $3 million worth of energy for low-income people. And so the kind of benefit to the town at large is greater than if we just sold to the highest bidder. So the town is taking a little bit less, but it has to spend maybe $3 million less on housing affordability measures. So does that make sense?
Yeah.
We would make 6 million. We're going to make 5 million if we do this, but there would be 8 million in total of benefits to the town. Something like that.
Impressive. So to be giving money free or lower cost energy to certain residents.
Yeah.
Okay, very good.
So how are you gonna administer that? Is it gonna be through the Schedule C program?
Yeah.
So you're gonna have the town gonna be the intermediary between matching the recipients to the town as the donor?
I think possibly, yeah.
Okay, so okay.
Kind of, one of the reasons we're doing it this way is because you can give everyone like a 20% discount on a community solar project, but then you need a whole intermediary middleman type figure who deals with billing and all this kind of stuff, which complicates things.
But we're trying to do something more complicated. We're trying to figure out how we can get individual homeowners to donate to a pool that gets parsed out to people that need it. And the issue is right now with Schedule Z, as you know, requires the donors detailed information, it requires recipients detailed information on the same form. So there's no anonymity between who the giver is and who the recipient is. And we need to fix that. Because we want to make sure that the recipients at a minimum are anonymous. Okay, at least to the general population, not to a nonprofit or another administrator that can make that happen. So I've had conversations with the state and Eversource about how to go do this, and it sounds like there needs to be an intermediary.
Are you members of Power Options?
Yes.
Yes, we are.
Feels like the type of thing they would help with for a fee, maybe.
Okay.
Good luck with that. feel free to email me.
We're trying to get
Feel free to ask
CLC,
questions about it.
we're trying to get CLC interested in doing it.
Good luck.
Yeah, that too. And or, what was the other company that's not a Falmouth?
Self-reliance.
Self-Reliance, which is a nonprofit, energy.
We talk about these regional projects.
Sure.
So in putting together a climate action plan, which we have time, I'll still talk about. Tom asked me to, I mentioned to Tom, there's some projects that make sense to do regionally. And I just wanted to share some of those. First on my list is basically the Energy Navigators project. Whoa. So Truro had the same idea to do the same thing. We're calling it the Truro Winter Energy Challenge. So we're kind of doing it in this 6 months, the next 6 months. And we found out that all Orleans are doing it, but this is easily a thing that all the Out Cape towns could be doing together. Because when people come to an event in Truro, they maybe live in Eastham, or people go to the Orleans Farmers Market, they live forever. So that's one thing. We kind of did solarize a few years ago. I think we need to do the same for heat pumps. You can do that. There's a campaign called Heat Smart. You get a ton of people to sign up to get a heat pump at the same time, and then economies of scale, then you'll get it 20% off. Something cheaper. Do that. Buses. Has anyone heard of this place in Saudi Arabia called The Line?
Have you?
What is it?
It's like this, like city that's inside a wall or something. It's all inside. And they've been building it for like a million years or something.
Million years.
Well, like a
Not a
while.
million.
And I don't know, we talked about it in my Spanish class the other day.
So it's yeah, it's like a linear city. It's going to be 100 miles long and half a mile wide and 100 stories tall or something. It looks like a big wall. It's probably never going to happen, but the whole idea is that it's all based around the most efficient way to move people from A to B around a subway system. Where I'm from in England, you try and do a rural bus system and like everyone's got to get this way, this way, this way, this way, this way. And in a sparsely populated area, it just doesn't really work. But on the Cape, we are the line. We have Route 6, and everyone's within like a mile or so of each side. So we have the most potential for the most effective bus system. We should work together as an Out Cape to get the bus, like best practice is coming every 10 minutes. You don't have to check the schedule. You just go on down there and get on the bus. It comes. Until we can, I think together we can make that happen more. Until we can make that happen, which is maybe a difficult task. One thing we don't have is bus shelters. What's the deal with that? You've got one in Eastham, maybe two, but we don't have bus shelters. And I think what we should do is have a bus shelter design competition. So what could happen is we spend, 15 grand per bus shelter and they put a glass box and it kind of solves the problem that bus shelters exist. When you see people sitting on the side
With a food truck.
With a food truck. That's what I'm getting to. So if you see people sitting on the side of Route 6, they're like, standing and it's hot and sunny or it's raining and that it's dangerous. And what that's telling the community who sees that is we don't care about bus riders and we don't value this. This isn't something that as a community we are encouraging. And so people don't take the bus. And so our demands to get them to put on more buses don't work because there's not enough demand for them. So what do we have on the Out Cape that most places don't have? A bunch of great artists and architects and things. So we should have all these different bus shelters that represent the local area. You could have these mid-century modern bus shelters. We have these funky RTUP towny bus shelters or whatever. And in them, you put a nice bench, a little free library. You could put some of the local food pantry stuff in there because local people ride the buses at higher rates. You could have a little LED screen that says your bus is coming in 11 minutes. You're sitting there waiting for the bus. You don't know when it's going to come. You can go on the website with the schedule, but from there, you can't click the link that has the little map that shows where the bus is, because that does exist, but you just can't click it there. So even if you want that on a screen, or even if you just have a QR code that said is where the bus is, a ton of stuff we could do. And I think that would be a cool, interesting project to do regionally. One more. So in Eastham, you did the whole North Eastham Business District thing. We're trying to do a similar thing in Truro. Sometimes it's controversial. I think that local affordable housing is a climate solution. We think about traffic on Route 6. In Truro, our biggest source of emissions is transportation, same in Eastham, I think, people driving their cars. The fact that a lot of people who work around here have to drive for an hour, or from off Cape, or the people who come and do our plumbing have to drive so far, that's a big source of our carbon emissions. And I think there's a lot of people in Truro oppose affordable housing on environmental grounds because of the water or something. You know, something's valid, something's not valid. But the idea that affordable housing is it's development and therefore bad for the environment, I think misses the whole climate point that if people can live where they work, they don't need to drive for 3 hours a day to get to where they need to be. I think some of that messaging stuff.
And they won't have to drive through Eastham.
Exactly. Lucky them.
Lucky, yes,
Not gonna happen.
less vehicle miles traveled on our,
Buses are gonna stop that.
yeah.
So other stuff like resilience, I think is good to look regionally, grid upgrades. We have like this one power line from Orleans that could break at any point. And all that kind of stuff. Like if Eastham power lines go down, Wellfleet and Truro and P-Town lose power. So stuff like that.
Except for the one with the battery,
Except for P-Town for
Right.
4 hours or whatever.
right?
Would love to chat a bit more after this and see how we can take a bite out of some or all of that. We've got our goals, our annual goals session coming up in December. And some of these I think would be great ideas, you know, for us to include in that as well. In terms of how to get something started. We just got to get started.
Yeah, and so we're writing a climate action plan. This is the draft. We've done it a little different from you. We've kind of had the committees write the draft and then we're doing public engagement. It's at the point where we're going to start doing public engagement, and one of those stakeholders that we want to engage is regional towns. So I don't know how exactly to do that, but you're writing a plan, we're writing a plan. Probably a lot of stuff is going to align. Probably you have ideas that we don't have, and we have ideas that you don't have. And I'd like to figure out how to work together a little bit more.
Good.
And Orleans is putting together a plan someday.
Someday,
Climate roadmap,
oh, nice.
putting it in our.
Cool. We should work together. Oh, sure, please. Is Orleans on the outtake?
Yes.
Some people say it is, but nearly everyone else I ask say, no, it's not.
Your purposes, yes.
It's really a border.
Your assistant town manager says.
It's Lower Cape, Outer Cape.
All right, well, we actually gonna talk about our climate action plan next. You're still welcome to stay, or if you want to
How
get
long,
home
how long is the agenda outside?
until 6 o'clock.
Hey, Tom, it looks like John has a question, by the way, from the remote.
Thank you.
Oh, John, I'm sorry. I didn't-
No, that's okay. No, Chris, great ideas. Quick question. Do you feel like you've got, good support from the town leadership to pursue these more creative ideas? And who is it that you're sort of working with most typically day to day on things like that?
Yeah, my supervisor is Emily Beebe, who's the health agent. And kind of Jared, who's the DPW director, both of those. In Truro, I have great support. All the staff think this is important when I come up with a crazy idea. One idea I have is that we should have a ferry bus that goes along the bayside and picks people up and goes up to P-Town, and then his buses are kind of boring, but get people on a ferry, it takes twice as long, but they're on a ferry. That's probably never gonna happen, but I come up with crazy ideas and there's mostly enthusiasm.
And as coincidences apply, Emily happens to know our town managers.
I'm aware of that.
Thank you.
Very good.
I think I should
Thank
go
you.
pick up my kid.
Yes. Well, thank you. Thank you for coming in, and
Thank you.
let's talk after this.
Thanks for having me and invite me back anytime.
All right. So next item. The climate action plan, and I think first, what I want to do is give you a little bit of insight from a discussion that Roberta and I had with the commission. And that actually gave me some more information on, that we really didn't, or at least I didn't quite understand as to how they were going about the plan. So I think that's going to be important for us all to understand and talk about. But I think a big question for us is whether we want to kind of stand up as a committee and give a consolidated input, which I think would have a stronger weighting than our individual inputs. Now, I will say, though, that we do have all the ability to do individual inputs. Right, that public comment period is still open. You can go on to the website and put the comments in. You can send them emails. And of course, we have had inputs for the last 4 months or so, right, in terms of the public outreach and the 2 workshops. So I know I think almost everyone has participated and had inputs.
In addition, the commission met with us as a committee back in the spring.
And that's a good point. Yes, excellent point. Excellent point.
That's where these ideas germinated.
Yeah, and Roberta and I have been conveying back and forth the things that we've talked about here. What's interesting to me is kind of what Chris was saying in terms of the commission's normal mode of operation, and that this is what they were doing this time, was the community outreach first. And their thought, and Roberta, keep me honest here, because if you heard it differently than I, their plan is to bring to the town this collection and assemblage of comments and ideas from staff. They've done staff interviews from community. They've done, as part of that, specific interviews with certain parts of the community that they're trying to reach. They did a meeting with us. They've had pop-ups. We participated in some of those pop-ups. So they've done all that kind of research. So I think what we're seeing is a bit of a, hey, here's all these great ideas that are options for the town to go tackle. And what they suggested is that next up, after they get this done and they hand it to us, it's really up to us, us, the town, right? And we were talking to Shane a little bit about how this gets managed by the town, and I think there's still some questions there that we've got to properly figure out. But essentially, there's work to be done after they hand it back to us, to figure out what are the items that we think are most important that we do want to dive into.
Sorry, do you mean the committee?
I think.
What do you mean when you?
Well, see, I'm saying the town. My opinion is that the committee is going to be very heavily involved in that, akin to the strategic planning committee type of mode of operation. But in essence, the town owns the plan at that point, right? I don't know, Shana, if you had any thoughts on that.
No, I agree with that. The town, taking on the plan once it becomes the town's plan, but also having involvement from the committee as you have been involved in the plan formation all along.
And there's certainly sections in here and that's why I put an extra column in. Where do we think the committee might want to lead? I think there are outreach areas that there's probably nobody within the town that is really set up to do the type of outreach that we're being tasked with. So I think that is a clear item that we would want to do. There may be adaptation pieces that, the town, it's kind of scattered. And similar in the climate areas where there's outreach to businesses, for example, or to residents, and continuing to work in the green communities and helping advise. So there's a lot of pieces, so there's still plenty for us to do. And I think we've got to figure out where the line is between, the 7 of us going to work full time on this stuff, which was not the plan when we all volunteered for this. So
I mentioned to Willow today in our phone call about the strategy session we have coming up. Was that we need to delineate in that plan what is the ECAC responsible for and assisting the town with versus what could a Climate Action Network outside of the ECAC be doing? What can they be tasked with? Because they should have less restrictions than what we do in terms of open meeting laws and stuff like that. So you'd be able to form, student groups or mixed groups that go off and can do things and make headway, not independent of us, but without us getting in the way, so to speak.
And
Oh, I'm sorry, Tom. So I guess I'm just trying to understand and say input. So I guess what level of what is that input? I mean, to the extent that we can influence, what this is and then what remains, in the main roadmap or the main plan, because it was clear at the meeting that they've gone to a lot of detail beyond this level. I mean, yeah, they had public outreach and you synthesize and you put it out there and like, oh, what did we hear? And then, but they just have clearly put in a lot of effort and time in providing a lot of detail behind each of these actions. So I guess my question
I'm
is,
sure of that.
well,
What do you think, Roberta?
Strategies, they're not actions.
well, they talk like the bike rack. So my, what
I think
I
that was
inferred
one
was,
example.
right. Well, other things that were there, I inferred from that they've gone to, a lot of effort has been spent on going to a next level of detail beyond this. I guess when we say,
I didn't get that sense.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Maybe they give an example of what it would look like in
Okay.
terms of what the actions are. We won't call those actions at this point. We'll call these strategies.
okay, whatever.
And so I think it's, from what I can gather, it's kind of agreeing what
Mhm.
those sectors are,
Mhm.
the strategies are, thinking through who would ultimately be responsible for implementing them, and then sorting out the actions. And it's not, I think the commission can help with that, but I think that's also got to be our job as a town and as a committee to determine what those actions are to fulfill that strategy.
Okay,
And that's the work ahead of us. Would you agree, Tom?
Yeah. And because I was a little bit dismayed at the way they kind of rolled out very quickly all this stuff very, very fast.
Mhm.
And we had like 15 minutes to digest it, right? And then they threw up that one example, which I thought was, and I told them, I thought that was the wrong kind of example to provide. And they said, well, we thought that would be less controversial than trying to dive into one of the bigger examples, which they haven't finished yet. So they're being very cautious about putting stuff out before it's ready. So whatever that means in their mind, in a very rough draft format. I mean, they've kind of compiled, I think, lists of stuff that they've been gathering and trying to synthesize, but it's not in a coherent fashion yet.
so neither of you have seen anything other than the bike
No.
rack example, anything a lot beyond this level of detail.
What you see is what you
Okay.
get. I know we had
Okay.
a couple of hands up.
And Kathy.
Yeah, Kathy,
So I see that they've done some prioritization. One of the things I suggested when on the, I don't remember whether it was before or after the workshop was, one of the things that they don't do that I think maybe the committee can help with for the town are things that have short-term impact and long-term impact. Because, when the town makes some decisions about which ones they're going to invest in and how they're going to approach it, right? Some things have a short-term, could have short-term benefit, and others could have, others will require more work, but will have a longer in a longer time frame and perhaps have more benefit. And I think that, if I were on the committee, one of the things that I would thing to add, because I think the committee has the perspective on it, is, how do you have the right mix, right? Because you can't do all of those things, right? That was my reaction, in the workshop, is there's way too much stuff there to do. It's like it's too much to consume. It's like going to a restaurant that has 5 pages of things and you can't decide what to buy because you really only wanted to choose from like 6 things total, not 6 pages of it. I felt like it was kind of the same concept. And so when you look at when you talk about what could the committee do and how could the committee best contribute to this and without necessarily making it into your full-time jobs. One of the things would be to help the town understand what you could do that is, I'm going to call it the easier, not easy, but easier to do, right? And how could you do that? That's what, that has some impact. And then what are the things, maybe there were only a few right off the bat that you would want to invest in the time in and the money in and the staff time on to get a longer term impact. That's what I thought was missing. I thought it was like too much stuff. None of it's bad stuff. It's just too much.
Yeah, Kathy, I agree. It does look a little bit like a laundry list, but I think that this is both a short and long-term document. One of the reasons we have a strategic plan in our town is that we can take these plans that we have in the town and pull up some of the things that are the most important or urgent, or as you say, maybe more straightforward, pull them up and where that is what's going on the list for this coming year or two. And it's constantly reviewed. We'll be constantly reviewing this list to decide what can then be moved up in priority. We do have a system in town to do that.
Right, I agree, and I agree with that. But the question on the table was how does the committee have the most impact, right? In terms of how would the town, the town's approach to this, and that was my thinking, that you got the knowledge to be able to help prioritize those things, rather than just presenting a lot of things and without some thoughtful prioritization of which ones, to your point, right? To the prioritization of which ones make sense.
So Kathy, the answer, because we asked that question, and I think we're on the same wavelength. They're going to provide us with perhaps not as much as I'd hoped, but what they're saying they will provide is an initial estimate, I'll say, of the climate benefits and the benefits to the community of the different actions. But they're not going to talk about the cost or the resources needed to implement. They want to leave that to the town. So once that gets mixed in, and the process we haven't figured out yet, we haven't discussed this with Shana or the town yet as to how it's done. I hope the committee will have will be interested in and will be accepted as a major player in trying to do that. That'll be all mixed into a return on investment type of prioritization.
Right.
So that's still to come. I think in this case, and they indicate that they said they're still learning because this is a pilot. They aired more on providing all the inputs that they've gotten, and they didn't want to squash any voices. So there's a lot of stuff in there. And I think part of the question that we have before us today, perhaps, is, all right, do we wait until the document's done, and then dive in, or do we want to get in there now and make some suggestions on things? Yeah, that's my tendency. Try to fine tune it a little bit better than what we're seeing right now. Maybe even to the point of saying, hey, this doesn't belong here, or this is, we had a bunch of good suggestions.
We did.
And that's what we need to try to figure out. I was going to, Roberta, did you have something? I was going to call on Shana because I know she has her hand up. Okay, Shana.
My understanding in terms of the formation of the document is that it was, and it's typically how a lot of planning documents are formed, is, nobody wants to make assumption as to what is a priority for the town, and nobody wants to sort of set that up before and then go to ask people what they think. So I think that's why it was done that way. So there was a lot of outreach to all the different groups, businesses, part-time residents and those different types of groups, and also the staff. So I think that's why some of those other recommendation items kind of show up, that things about complete streets. I'm assuming Paul, that may have come from Paul. So it resulted in a huge amount of recommendations over a lot of different sectors. But who knows when the next time is that we'll make a new plan? It could be 5, 7, or 10 years. So it's good to have those recommendations in there, that as they get done, maybe we can have it as the whole piece of implementation is like a separate discussion, I feel like. Because, you know, I think it could be an ongoing thing, like the strategic plan, or, you know, determining like how quickly that plan does get updated and how it is implemented and what grants are available is a whole nother piece. But I think it's important to get the feedback to the commission that the committee has at this point so that they can incorporate it into their draft that they have as they're currently drafting it, but also when the full draft comes out also. So having like a separate meeting, maybe in December, to go through the recommendations as they're written out in much greater detail. And I wanted to double check that you didn't get the draft recommendations in like a long form written document from the commission at all,
No,
Roberta or
no, I
Tom?
didn't see anything like that, no.
Well, very initially, when the very first discussion of the draft, they had a kind of a longish document, remember? They kind of gave rationale behind some of these. And description, it was more of a narrative description of what they were, not necessarily what the actions were, but do you remember that?
Recommendation, it has a recommendation, an action, and the context. And it's, well, that's what it says on the, that's what it said on the cover sheet anyway. But yeah, so it goes in, it's very long and it's very,
How many pages was that?
Don't you remember it?
I
It's
saw
like-
one that was a couple pages long.
it's like, I don't know, it's probably 40, it's
Oh,
40 pages.
Yes. That was the
Okay.
initial document that it had housing and development rather than buildings. Do you remember that?
there was one way
Yes.
back. Was that?
What's the date on the
Yeah.
document?
Yeah.
Yeah, what's the date?
So it sounds like you met with, including Paul, with the commission staff on October 15th. And then I met with them separately on the 20th to discuss that document and,
Yeah,
okay. I just want to make sure you had that.
yeah.
Some people do.
Oh, October 20th, all right, I'll take a look.
I suspect maybe only two in the committee do.
Yeah, I wonder. Well, some of the early stuff they sent
Yeah.
around, they said was very draft and they were not ready to release it
This is not helpful.
to anyone.
Okay.
I know there was something early that wasn't very, it was not well baked.
So
Anyway,
I'm sorry. So first off, I really appreciate your effort and getting everyone's comments and synthesizing and doing the ranking, which I guess is important. So thank you very much. So at the public meeting, so we were doing sticky dots on the boards. So I just wonder, I don't know if anyone knows what they're doing now with the input they got on the boards with the sticky dots and like where that then crosses over. Because then we've gone through and done a prioritization, so how that works.
So I'm sorry, Shana, go ahead.
I just got a document from Steve this afternoon that was a summary that they're going to post on their webpage that says, you know, how many stickies each of those recommendations got on each of the boards. I can forward it to you all, and it just gives a summary of the comments that they received at the meetings and the feedback and all of that. So you can look at that. It was pretty interesting that the lawn chemicals had the most by far.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What?
The lawn
Lawn
chemicals.
chemicals.
Interesting.
The lawn chemical.
Yeah, I remember the. you know,
The recommendation for lawn
exercise,
chemicals.
Oh, lawn.
Preserving
Oh.
the,
Yeah.
our lakes and
you
ponds.
know, you have to admit that exercise along with the one we went through, this is really strictly a popularity contest.
Yeah.
And it's certainly huge and important input, but it's only one.
It's
Yeah.
one angle.
Pulling together
Yeah.
a comprehensive plan,
Right.
so.
So sorry, go ahead.
So I just want to say, I mean, I know we don't have a lot of time. I feel like this was a really good kickoff to what we should be doing. I do think that we need to think about, you know, Kathy had a good point before, long-term versus short-term. But, you know, impact and feasibility need to be evaluated in this too. And I really didn't, you know, experience anything in last week's conversation that hinted towards that.
No,
But I feel like there's a lot of work here.
Oh, yeah.
a lot of work here, and I want to endorse what you said earlier. Each one of us are residents, we're perfectly able to go in and put our own input, but I think it's exquisitely important that we actually, as a committee, speak with some unification of voice, and I think it should be weighted as, you know, people who've been following these issues for some time and have a good opinion on it.
Yeah. And there was a suggestion during that conversation we had that they were kind of maybe even second guessing, if I read between the lines, of not having another meeting with us. They seem to have a normal posture of using committees, whatever they are in the town, as part of the public comment periods. And I think we tried to make the point that this committee has special relevance and knowledge in that. That's not to say that we should be the only inputs, of course, because there's some interesting stuff that came out.
Just should be weighted
Yeah.
accordingly, I mean, that's why we're here.
So let's talk about next steps then, because obviously to do the type of deep dive that I think could be very interesting to do would probably take a special meeting. I think there's some good inputs that came in terms of changes, changed wordings, new items to get added. I think that's especially relevant in terms of new items to put in there. There's areas of maybe the categories should be better oriented. I mean, as someone who likes the categories properly done so that we can ultimately manage it, that part I'd be interested in too. So what do you all think? Oh, and then the last thing I did was, in terms of consensus on what was the 20 least important items, I listed the bottom 20. Now you have the full list that came in through the survey, so we can go through it anyway at whatever time we want to do it. But I thought maybe that would provide, in terms of consensus on the ones we thought was least relevant, if we wanted to say, hey, this needs to be fixed because the way it's written isn't relevant, or it's not relevant, period. So there's different ways we can do that depending on how we feel towards some of these.
I have two thoughts on this. One is some of the things that perhaps our committee feels is not a priority in terms of impact, or ways that committee could impact or whatever. We have to remember that a lot, especially the natural resources area, that there's a huge impact of what's going on with our land and our natural resources. And it's completely connected with climate. Whether this plan itself is going to be doing the work towards improving the situation isn't the point. The point is that we have many other plans in the town, like the land management plan, the open space plan, where there's definite effort to improve the situation. And I think that what the commission wants to do is to have those areas mentioned in the plan, not necessarily that it's going to be climate committee and so on doing this, but others in the town are doing it, but it's got to be looked through a climate lens. Is
good point.
So
that's a really good point.
It does belong in the plan, although you'll say this is being conducted by the land management forces, whatever they are.
Right.
And as you say, some of these, this plan is supposed to address both the mitigation side of how we can reduce the impact of some of this stuff on the climate, but also the other way around, the adaptation side. What should we be doing to build in resiliency into the community because of things we know are going to be affected by climate? And I'll also mention, I've mentioned this before, I've been very buoyed. I've been very happy with the amount of comments every now and then I'm getting from different committees that are like, oh, we're really looking forward to this plan because there's stuff in here that we want to be able to work on. So I think that is a very positive thing, and your point, Robert, is well taken.
And I think that also aligns, with what Kathy said before. I mean, there's an awful lot in here, and it may be doable, but not all by this plan. Like if you think about parsing this out in a strategic way to the recycling committee, or food security committee, I don't know what the committees are, But some of these things don't feel like they are front and center. Climate, more peripheral in the margin maybe.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
Implementation is gonna be a big part of this. You know, once we prioritize what's gotta be done and why, justification as to why these are the right priorities, then we get implemented.
Yeah.
And implementation is not just this committee. The implementation is all the government offices, and it's gonna be outreach to school committee, not school committees, but these are the folks right here that bear the brunt of what we didn't do and what we're trying to do, and they gotta live with it going forward. We'll be long dead by the time, a lot of this stuff gets acted on. So, the people that are to come need to take this and own it and figure out how to fix it. Because they'll
No
hopefully
pressure.
benefit from what our mistakes, benefit from our ideas, and unfortunately suffer our what we did and what we didn't do. We should have.
So, shit. It's gonna let Shana jump in.
Yeah, so I think kind of in agreement with what Roberta was mentioning, I think these other items in different areas are very important to include. I think depending on what your definition of impact is, I think some people feel these impacts on a daily basis, especially in the shellfishing industry, where people have, constant red tide closures and all different types of shellfish closures and different shellfish being affected. So there's different ways that the climate is affecting people in different parts of their life. So I think it may not be impactful in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, but the climate is affecting these areas. So I think like a perfect example would be Roberta and Eleni working on the hazard mitigation plan and also the zoning for flooding. So it's not something that the committee is directly leading, but is trying to influence and advocate for those things to be important priorities in the town. So I think having these other ones in here may not be something that is, like the zoning is maybe the planning board and the zoning board of appeals or some other department. And so it's not directly the committee, but the committee is involved in it.
Right, and the zoning department, or the zoning committee and the planning department, their names are on the implementation of that particular strategy. So they are owning that with the help of the committees.
And it can't, because this is the town plan. So it's being adopted by the town. The recommendations were formed by the town. This is what people in the town said they wanted. And so that's what makes it kind of owned by everyone in depending on how it applies to their department or their committee.
Does the Shana, the model that I mentioned as a possibility, similar to the strategic planning committee, is that one that might work here where the climate and energy committee is more the orchestrator? That's the right word. Trying to help advise the town on priorities, and then maybe help interact with the different committees in town, and staff members that are working the plan, and maybe even help catalog with the tool that the strategic planning committee is going to use to catalog actions and track actions. Those sort of things, we haven't really fully talked about this yet, but that's kind of what's coming to mind here as we talk about this.
Along with a sustainability coordinator.
Yeah, I think that is a great way to look at it. I think, whether it's quarterly reviews on the agenda where you kind of go through them or, twice a year, monthly, I think that all needs to be figured out. But I think it makes sense for the committee to have it as like just how you had described. Checking in with different departments, seeing how it's going, seeing if they're planning for any of those action items, what barriers are they coming into, or what other priorities are they working on that's preventing them from working on some of these items, or and it's a good way to have conversations with those departments to keep that at the forefront, so that it doesn't just kind of go by the wayside over time.
John,
So I'm trying to tie a bow on this part of the conversation. Are we saying that this committee would function as sort of the implementation coordinator for the plan?
I don't know if we. My own opinion is that might be a step too far, but that sounds like a sustainability manager.
Sounds like somebody employed by the town, not a consultant.
Yeah. But helping keep track of things and helping prioritize things, and helping advise. I think somewhere in there, we got to talk about that more amongst ourselves and with the town as to how we draw that line.
Mm-hmm.
If I could, I think the most important thing for us to do right now is to give meaningful impact on the existing plan that has come out. And yes, implementation is going to be important, and who's leading and all that stuff is going to be important. But right now, we actually have a lot of information here. And it feels to me like what we need to figure out is, does this belong in the plan? If it doesn't, do we have a suggestion about where it should be? Or should we eliminate it altogether? And then maybe prioritize, and I know that we've tried to do this, but we really haven't discussion about it. I think a discussion about it is really important. And then figure out when we have what we have, and I'm hoping it's less than what we have. And it's more impactful, that we could really evaluate the quality of that plan, because right now this one really is all over the place in some ways. And we really have to hone in on it.
Yeah.
So,
Tom, I'm just trying the practical deadlines relating to the commission. I believe in our meeting last week, their hope was to have another document written by Thanksgiving.
Right.
So it feels that if we wanted to be able to make an impact on anything that they were working on, we needed to do it very soon.
Yes, yeah.
So I don't know whether we would just want to pass this on for their information so they can see where
I
thinking
think
is, or I mean, you've done a tremendous amount of work on this.
absolutely.
But it'd be nice to have a conversation about first, to your point, election.
Yeah. I've been thinking through some of this. I mean, wording changes, we could probably vote offline on that. Those are fairly obvious and straightforward, I think. Changing categories, again, we could have a discussion or vote offline. The ones that I think would be really important to look at would be the new items to add, because I think it would be hard to add new stuff later if it was missed. I would love to see a discussion, myself, on getting rid of stuff that is cluttering up the plan. But frankly, we can get rid of that later as well. That's the easier part when it gets to us. If we say, hey, all right, this is nice that we're gonna enhance recreational opportunities, we'll just leave it there. We don't necessarily have to dive into it, full throated. But it'd be harder to add stuff, in my opinion. So I'm gonna throw it out to what everyone, may think as best way forward, because I think what we're coming to is possibly another meeting before Thanksgiving, so we can spend a little bit more time on this.
Well before Thanksgiving.
Yeah, because
they're
it's
writing right now.
Yeah.
So whatever.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay.
I actually thought we would be doing a lot of that today, really.
Right, talking about this.
Right. I mean,
Yeah, but it was clear we really had to talk about
we have
the
other things.
importance and how we're gonna go through
What the
this.
process is gonna be.
Yeah. I mean, I'm want to respect everyone's time. 6 o'clock is what we said we would try to wrap up with. If the group wants to stay and discuss new actions, we can do that quickly, or I think we're gonna need another meeting anyway, regardless of how much we discuss about it tonight.
So why don't we discuss the approach we're going to take, so that
Yes.
we're confident in that and know what we need
Good
to get
idea.
I
out.
like that.
Suggestions?
Yeah, I would start just setting up 2 meetings. We can always blow one off if we don't have any continuing stuff, but if we set up 2 meetings, like
Amongst
in the
us,
next,
I'm sorry.
amongst us, in the next 10 days, with our sole focus being this
Hmm.
plan, I think we can get a lot of traction. Because I loved what I read, and I thought you did a great job synthesizing this. I thought people I could like, almost tell who wrote what, and I really think it was really helpful.
There's a lot of good inputs.
Yeah,
You should give the
absolutely.
commission a heads up.
I can do that. Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, I mean, question of what kind of format you want to give it to them, give it to them so that they can
Mm.
implement it.
In some areas, I think there's probably more discussion needed than others. Like I said, how would you like to go through the sections? And I arbitrarily myself set up sections of wording changes, changing categories, new items to add, and maybe discussion on the bottom 20. We can have other discussions where I can synthesize it in different ways. What do you all think is the appropriate way to go through this?
Well, I like to get the easy stuff out of the way first, because it just clutters my thinking. So I love taking a look at the bottom 20 as one thing, and maybe wording changes, which feel like every wording change that I read felt like it strengthened what was already there. Could we strengthen it further? Possibly. Is it necessary? I don't know. But I would go with the low hanging fruit first. It's just my way.
And if, for instance, I didn't put the top 20 because we all had consensus. We all liked the top 20, right? It was pretty strong. It was pretty strong in the bottom 20 that we didn't like these 20. But we could go through the whole list if we wanted to. I think ultimately we're going to be going through the whole document at some point in time anyway.
Yeah, and I imagine that we might get some pushback from the commission on some of these things that we find not the bottom 20, as we call it. Because it was the commission that met with staff. It was the commission that met with committees and public and other organizations, and they heard things from the community. And I assume that some of this stuff they may say, okay, we would agree with you, but they're gonna push back on some of this stuff.
And some of it is, as I said, lead by example, but it's kind of more, I'll say, symbolic to keep things in people's minds. Waste reduction. Yeah, that's there's a good 10% or so, 8 or 10% that is solid waste. How do we get there? Some of this would go in, I think the recycling committee would be very strong in working that with us. Some of this, like off-road vehicles, they're extremely polluting because they don't have the same kind of controls that a passenger car has. But there's not a lot of them. But there were a lot of comments received by the commission, they told us about, of the businesses saying, how come the town isn't doing anything? How come the town is still driving around these vehicles don't have enough solar, they're not leading by example. So yeah, there's challenges there. Might be worth leaving in for that purpose. If there might be worth having better wording, I'll take the very bottom one, enhance public spaces and recreational opportunities. Well, are they going to explain how that ties in to climate and or adaptation?
See, for something like that, I gotta say, it just doesn't hit me as being like impactful. It's a great thing. I want better public spaces too. But don't clutter the climate action plan with actions like that are going to result in no climate change. So get it out of there, put it somewhere else, or just let it go for now,
Now fisheries, Shana just talked to us about fisheries, and certainly the local shellfish fisheries, the oysters and whatnot are highly affected. So there's an adaptation side to that equation.
What's the infrastructure right now that supports local fisheries?
Nothing.
The infrastructure?
Yeah. What
I think they call it out in the plan exactly what they would recommend that we do to support that. I don't have it off the top of my head, but whether it's policies or purchasing shellfish seed to put out to supplement the dying populations, things like that would be off the top of my head, but I'd have to look at it. Probably
Okay.
Runoff that's, going right from the boat ramps into the marsh, and ponds and things like that. So,
Okay,
And those kinds of actions will often be directed by town staff, right? And some of that.
oh
stuff?
yeah, and there's grants out there, like we have a grant, we have several of them to address the runoff going into the salt marsh, from NRCS, and we're working on that for Hemingway and Collins Landing. But I think, maybe these items are not reducing greenhouse gases, but they're definitely important in people's lives, like the fisheries, and also, we have a huge heating problem. So in open spaces are important for that, and it's important to be aware that there's a lot of areas that don't have adequate shading.
I mean, Salt Pond is, as far as I know, is part of the National Seashore, correct?
The water quality is monitored and maintained by the town. The
Okay,
town
so-
owns that strip of land that kind of goes around the perimeter. That's owned by the town as well. And we're working on exchanging land with them to own where that shellfish building is. So that's owned by the seashore, but we're working on exchanging that land with that for
Okay,
that to be
so we
owned by
can-
the town.
We can make policies and affect things like runoff without the approval of the National Seashore.
Yeah, I mean, well, we can work with them. Like we have a
Okay.
grant to address the stormwater in Salt Pond, from the NRCS funding. So hopefully it's still, we still have it, but we're working on that right now
Okay,
to address
all right. Thanks for
runoff.
the clarification.
Now, perhaps some of this, if they put it in the right categories, again, I like categories. Some of this is not building, some of this is not, transportation. It's really in the area of adaptation. So maybe that would help if they put it into an area like that was more clear.
Yeah, I didn't see a category for adaptation, it was sprinkled throughout. perhaps.
Yeah.
I think, to have a sector, whatever you want to call it, adaptation, resilience, I think would be, yeah.
But it's more obvious why
Right,
they're in there.
Does it make sense for us to schedule some time where we look at this bottom 20, whatever, and we evaluate what everyone came up with, and then we, as a group, decide what we really want to share with the commission? Have a discussion. Right now, we're kind of just sort of.
Yeah.
On the bottom
nothing
20?
thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So they're more focused and say, okay, our goal is to figure out what we are going to say to the commission about that.
Yes. Agreed.
So I
So-
think,
Go
can
ahead.
can I have a suggestion?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. I think that, so to me, I do feel like that's the low hanging fruit, and we might be able to do that. I'm hoping to do that in quick order and not get too down in the weeds of that, because at the end of the day, what we really have to evaluate are these sectors, buildings and in natural resources, and what those sectors are, how they align with what our decarbonization goals are, our solar goals, whatever we have prioritized based on adaptation, based on transportation, and the solar work that happens with energy or whatever it is, and get clear about that. I feel like they need to hear from us, like, actually, these are the sluggers, these are the big, important sectors that have to be addressed in a climate action plan. Otherwise, it doesn't pass the sniff test. So get really focused on that. And then, yeah, we can find ways to word how we would get rid of the bottom 20, but if I were them, I would really appreciate, like, we thought these were the bottom 20. If you have any questions, let us know. But quite frankly, these don't really impact climate in these ways.
So some of this, I think, is because we just don't understand. I don't know where they came up with. I don't know where they came up with these particular draft recommendations, but it's just there's no explanation as to why it has anything to do with climate. Maybe it does, but we don't know that. So I hate to spend a lot of time trying to understand what their thinking was.
If we can't infer it,
Right, we should just kick it back and say, explain.
Well, we haven't seen the rest of the document yet either, right? So.
And are we talking about maybe even revisiting the sectors? Because when I look at buildings and energy, it seems like there's a lot of overlap maybe between buildings and.
Well, let's,
and
since there's,
energy. So,
since there's 5 sectors,
or are there?
maybe that's something we,
Yeah.
well, right now,
Yeah.
maybe that's something we can talk about right now. What do you, yeah, please, what
Well,
do you?
we
what
only
do you
have,
think?
we only have a couple of minutes left really in this
Yeah,
meeting.
yeah.
But I think that's the, you know, that's the way to start, is like, do we have the right sectors? So I'm contradicting myself a little bit, but it's the next phase. Once you get rid of the noise, do we have the right sectors? And if the answer is yes, fine. If they need adjustment, we would have a conversation, come to some consensus about that. And then how many goals really are impactful and below, and you know, and if they align in multiple sectors, there's ways of showing that in a document as well. And then figure out the process from there. It's as far as I can sort of think it through. But that's the way I would go about it.
So
And I want to, Tom, can I follow up on that?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I want to kind of echo and elaborate on that because I think Eleni's on the track here. It seems to me we should be able to articulate a handful of questions that the committee has and wants to answer about this plan in its current state. One of them is, are these the right sectors? Another one is any given individual recommendation, you know, speaking effectively to that sector, and is it related to climate change? As we've been discussing this, we've been tossing out a handful, I would say probably a handful of those kinds of questions. And what we can do is say, here they are to the commission. Here's how we are answering them so far. And we'd like to meet with you to talk further about this. But we can also use that exercise of identifying the questions as a way to prioritize our own review and figure out which of these questions is the most important for us to be answering now. As input to the commission.
So let's go to the sectors for a moment, because you know that there's a house of cards here. If we change stuff, it's going to affect other things as well. And the sectors, they were very clear. These are derived from the state.
Right.
Yeah.
This is the, and that's all coming from the IPCC at the United Nations. I mean, all that stuff is you know, the buildings, which is stationary energy. Now, I agree, there's some confusion in the way they put the goals amongst the sectors, but the buildings, the energy.
I'm sorry, Tom, you say they come from the state. Is there a state mandate?
Yes.
There is a state mandate.
Climate plan.
So every town in Massachusetts that has a climate action plan, they have the same sectors.
These are the sectors.
There is
Right. So they're built, their buildings, their energy, the same
yes, not
goal.
all towns have a plan, so I guess we can't say that they all have.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand.
But yeah, so the common terminologies, and I'll just explain some additional insights that we got from them, but the terminologies here are from the same way that our greenhouse gas inventory was done, the same way that the state climate plan was done, the Cape Cod climate plan. Buildings are stationary energy. Transportation, of course, is transportation. Now, there's some extra stuff tucked into those, like lawn equipment is put into transportation because it's lawn equipment is not stationary. So, all right, whatever. Energy is normally supposed to be the grid and where we're deriving our electricity from. I think their choice of goals here, in my mind, made that a little fuzzy. Natural resources is probably the only piece that we derive from a different category called, I can't remember what it's called, but there's agricultural, there's a bunch of other stuff that doesn't apply to us, that they just boiled it down to natural resources. And then community, they were focusing on what they said was governance. So it's kind of outreach and governance. It's how the plan would get managed and what type of educational outreach goes on there. So in terms of those top level 5, are there changes that you would make?
Well, I guess, just, opening up a little bit, let's say, trying to stand, but like energy 1.1 municipal facility energy consumption. So facilities, is that a building or?
And I think, yeah, and I think you're right on in terms of the items. 1.1, 1.2, 1.3.
Yeah, implement.
And energy really need to go into buildings. I mean,
So there seems.
yeah, I agree.
Right.
I absolutely agree on that. And I think that would clear up what energy is really about if that were to happen.
So I guess maybe Elaine's point, that what are we trying to think about? What is the goal if we were to step back and more energy efficient, greener buildings, and then maybe then all these recommendations then get resorted. That's just.
Yeah,
If we're really trying, are we allowed to at this point, or can we just step back? And not to throw all this away, of course, but step back and how we might better reorganize this, so it's. I don't know, more specific, more targeted at what our overall goal is, or is this what it is, and we just changing the wording within the sectors.
My opinion, again, we kind of pushed on them. They wanted to keep these 5
sectors.
Okay. And work with these, right? So I guess my question to you, because I'm just one voice, I'm not trying to push one or another, but if we took, for instance, and cleaned up what the goals were within each sector, would that help? Or are there other changes that you'd like to see made in those sector categories, a new sector or changes?
Maybe the cascade of questions are, is this a good goal? Yes or no? Is this the sector it belongs in? Is this broad enough and yet still pointed enough that that it makes sense to people? And maybe there are a couple of other questions, but that's the way I would start to organize my thinking around it. And, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, how can we get the best goals and the fewest that pack the best punch? That really needs to be our North Star, it seems to me.
Well, yes, but we're balancing the fact that the community has spoken. And some of the things that maybe we feel aren't packing a punch.
Right, but that's not, what I want to assert is that's not our job, it's their job. Our job is to give them feedback based on the lens of the climate, the climate action people here. And based on what we know, we're gonna give them that, and it's up to them to mediate, all the voices.
Which they have.
And at the end of the day, this plan is their plan. We're gonna give them the best advice we possibly can. And then the plan is gonna become what it is, and then we have to decide, okay, what parts can we actually lead? And the implementation questions will come to pass, but all we can do is offer them the feedback.
When you said this is their plan, who's the their?
Cape Cod Commission,
Well, ultimately the towns.
ultimately the town,
Okay,
but
whose plan, I guess?
whoever's writing it. Whoever's responsible for having written this and submitting it to whoever it gets submitted to, FEMA, whatever, state. Our signatures are not gonna be on this plan.
Well, it goes to the select board, and the select board will look to us to say, what do we recommend? So, yeah, we do have a piece there.
Well, we have a piece, but we're not responsible for the plan. We're responsible to advise on the plan.
Right.
And that is,
It's the town's.
we need to fulfill that responsibility
That's a good
with
point.
as much integrity as possible.
That's a good point.
And for us to say, well, some residents really want bike racks, so they put it in there. Well, we're gonna advise against that because we don't think it packs enough punch. But decide what you want to do, and then we carry on with the most impactful action steps here. That's what I think.
So Shana, I think you had your hand up first.
I was just wondering when you were gonna schedule the meetings. Are they gonna be
That's a good question.
one before
do it. We gotta
Thanksgiving
go.
and one after, or were you looking at to before Thanksgiving, because I think we're gonna get the draft of the full plan. It sounded like after Thanksgiving.
They wanted to have it finished before they went on, they went from to Thanksgiving. They wanted to have it finished.
Okay,
That was their goal.
Nice to meet you. Thank you.
okay.
You know, from the standpoint of structural changes to the plan, I would say we at least need to do what you were just suggesting in
Mhm.
terms of does this top level make sense before they issue the document? Now you made a good point, Mike, that once they issue the draft, they're not issuing the document, the draft at the end of the month. We may have more insight as to why they had certain ones in here and may change our ranking of what we think is important or not relevant. Because we do have questions on them for
I'm
sure.
not sure there's time for that. I just want to say.
Well, there's a whole month of public comment happening in December. So
Public
what's,
comment though, where we're
which
hoping to get this.
includes us, and we can ask for.
You've done a tremendous amount of work here. There is a lot of data about how this committee
Yeah.
is feeling about this.
Yes.
Wouldn't object to actually sending this to Steve and company on this. They then can ask the questions and they can evaluate whether that's something that they need to ask questions about or.
Clarify.
Yeah, because otherwise we could have hours of meetings and discuss each one of these endlessly, and I'm not quite sure what the product would be or how.
That's very,
Well, I think there's a little bit of work, discussion, a lot of clarity has happened just today and hearing from everyone. You know, things like adaptation. So there's questions in here about how does this affect climate? I think what we're saying is the other way around. The climate affects it and it needs to be in an adaptation category. So I hate to give the raw comments to them without us at least talking through them.
Synthesize a little bit and.
Yeah, the cascade of questions as
John, yes.
nicely put it.
Go, John.
I'm just saying that, yes, I'm agreeing with you, Tom. I think some structure and it would be something along the lines of what Eleni called a cascade of questions to say, here's our thinking, Cape Cod Commission. Here's the raw data that we've accumulated from ourselves here in the spreadsheet, but here's a guide to how we've been thinking about this. And I mean, shouldn't we be meeting with them to go over this?
Thank you. Yeah, I would think, that's why I would have expected it would have happened as part of this process.
Yeah.
so if that's the case, let me suggest we have one organizing meeting so that we are all singing in the key of C. Right, and we're not all singing, you know, I mean, we could say different things, I suppose, but we are stronger when we're unified and organized in our responses, right? So I do think that there's merit to that. And then, so I would propose, if I may, if we can have another meeting this week to tease that out and then invite them back next week with some representative group. If we all can't be there, we all can't be there. But once we've figured out and synthesized our voice, you know, I'm comfortable letting it fly with other people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think my thought would be the reason I'm saying I appreciate all the comments because I think they were all good, but in giving it to the commission, they're a little bit raw in terms of if I was receiving it, I'd be like, well, what do you want me to do here? Fuzzy as to what this would look like, agreed, but what are we asking them to do and how do they respond? So if we change it around into a consolidated, hey, you know, provide us more detail on this. We don't understand this type of thing, or this is, you know, like, what is a blue economy? We can talk about that right now. We can tell you what a blue economy is. It's a good question. Is it in scope? I think Shana is saying it is, right? Blue economy is the fishing community. So some of that we just have to massage a little bit before we hand it to them.
So let me assert again, what do you think of this proposal? I'm trying to get us out of here.
Oh, I know.
Because
Yeah,
I
you're
really
good
wanna
point.
leave,
Yeah,
but
thank
I'm
you.
into this,
Thank
but
you.
the proposal is we have one meeting with as many members as obviously could be there sometime this week. Synthesize our understanding of this plan, share, and then what are the questions? How do we want to approach the commission with this? You know, but we get our ducks in a row. And then next week, so that they have a chance to integrate this into something before Thanksgiving, if that's their goal. I feel like we're
Okay.
trying to be responsive to that timeline.
Do we want to do, say, hour and a half, maybe even 2 hours this week? You have any suggestions on
Well,
timing?
Let me make a proposition. Would it make sense for just three of you to get together and hash it out versus worrying about the open meeting venue? And then you can work on
And then bring it
it,
back to the committee.
then, yeah,
What do y'all think?
that way I think get more done.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I would though, before going into this meeting, have an idea how you're structuring that meeting.
For sure.
I would wonder too, like, if you're only gonna have 3 members, is that not representative of the committee? Or are the committee members that are not participating saying, I defer whatever the recommendations are to the commission?
No, Shana, what
Whatever
I'm
you
saying,
think.
we've all provided feedback. And now a lot of
Mhm.
feedback just needs to be, organized and written, so it makes more sense other than that. It's kind of like ad hoc right now. So if 3 people focus on doing that and then bring it back to the full committee and say, okay, is this what we understand you're asking for, or your issues? And we say, yeah, let's go for it, or no, let's change this, I know.
Yeah.
I just think they get more work done.
It's basically organizing.
Yeah.
It's organizing and say, okay, these are the sectors, they're not pliable, so we're gonna leave them as they are.
Okay.
And, and again, I wanna, the cascade of questions to me, and I can think further on it, that was just off the top of my head. But I'm happy to do that. And, then we have some structure to the meeting. Even though it's gonna be messy, there's a lot here.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
There's
I don't, but if at least we have some
Keep it up so
structured
you get done.
questions.
So. All right, so do we all, first question that you brought up, do we want to have a couple folks, 2 or 3 folks, try to synthesize all this stuff and get it back out to the committee and then meet later this
Can we
week
have
or
a-
next week?
Can we
Or
have a
do we wanna-
motion? Can I offer a motion?
I wasn't entertaining a motion here, but let's just sense of the community.
Well, so so we did it, but with the 3, then if we have the commission come here, it would just be the 3 meeting with the commission?
No, I
No,
would say whole
With the
committee.
full committee
Yeah.
next week, follow-up meeting with the commission. Okay, I'm just,
Maybe
okay.
give them a set of recommendations and questions for them and have a
Okay.
discussion.
Okay.
Because I don't think the idea of the 3 meeting is gonna be making decisions as to what's important and not important in the plan. It's to synthesize this
Correct.
information that, so
That's
the
right.
commission can understand what. we're trying to
Correct.
say.
Yeah.
That's right, all right.
Good,
Okay.
well put. So,
And you can always reach out to individuals if you don't understand what they said, you can do that independently.
So Roberta, you and I have been kind of functioning as the liaisons. Would you be willing to help on that?
Yes.
Got to figure out how we divide and conquer, but is there anyone else who would like
But I
to?
thought Lenny, you volunteered to.
Thank you for pronouncing my name
You're welcome.
correctly. I'm very impressed. I appreciate it. Yes, I'm happy to participate in that, and doesn't have to be exclusively me, but I'm happy to do that.
It doesn't have to be a closed meeting, you can have as many people there.
If we have more than 3 committee members there, we have a quorum, we have to go for a meeting, which we can do.
I think that it would be good to do that. That way the public can kind of see what the process, how the committee is looking at the planning process.
How we're making the sausage.
We're making the sausage. Actually,
Oh, we got more people in the room now.
I think that open meeting part would be better suited to once the sausage is made.
Right, that's what I was,
Yeah,
proposing.
I think that, because,
Was transparent.
So let's get to details. I would suggest Thursday or Friday. How does that look for you?
So. Honestly, Wednesday's best for me.
I can't do Wednesday. Not that I have to be here, but I can't do. I don't have.
So Wednesday, I have an all afternoon board meeting and I'm gonna be at the Dune Checks in the morning. Doing
Okay.
work on solar.
If we could do something on.
I could do Wednesday night though.
Yeah, I can't, that's the part for Wednesday.
Well, I think we're just talking 3 of us now.
Yeah, okay.
So we'll put our heads together in a minute and we'll
Okay.
come up with a time this
Okay,
week.
all right.
And figure out how we're gonna do this. And then I think that maybe means early next week for the we can invite the committee, our commission, but the committee should get together. What do y'all think about?
You're scheduling a full committee meeting next week?
Well,
Is
we
that what
can't do it on the select board night unless we come earlier. Because we'll hopefully some of you will be at the public hearing. What's good for everybody next week?
We get 17th,
Yeah.
21st is out for me,
Same here.
so, 17th, 18th, 19th.
So 18th, I have all day interviews for the Cape Light Compact Administrator. We're hiring a new administrator
17th.
from
or
8 a.m.
like
to
17th or 19th.
5:30. 19th works for me.
And remember, I think at this point is, as long as there's a quorum, I think. Because if I'm participating in the small group, I'm also happy not to be. I'm gonna be in New York and I'll try to be there if I can remotely, but I'm not sure. And I don't think it should depend on any one of us who are in the
Yeah.
Troika.
I'm confused.
So let's, how about for the Troika? Are we gonna say, could we do something this tomorrow or Wednesday?
I could do tomorrow. Yeah.
Depends on what time.
Name a time.
I have to do it. I have meetings beginning at 11 for almost the remainder of the day, but.
Thanks.
So I could do it in the morning is what I'm saying.
The morning, early morning, tomorrow.
9. It's not my preferred time, but it's the best time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, not fun.
Oh, boy.
Are we doing this, Zoom?
Let's do Zoom.
Yeah.
the 3.
Yeah. Okay, I'll set up a Zoom tomorrow.
And speaking.
Yeah, in the meantime, we can think a little bit about how we want to structure this in terms of
Yeah, let's talk.
transferring this piece of data to something that's.
Right. We gotta figure that out.
Yeah.
And then, we wanna get the group back together again. We can get material out for everyone to look at. We could meet, if we're talking about next week, we could do something before the select board meeting. That kind of runs into an afternoon activity then.
Would it make sense to do a poll for this, Tom, to get everybody, you're trying to get the full committee input on the meeting date, right?
Yeah. All right, let me do that. Let me just send out a poll so everyone can look at their calendars and we can kind of.
Do you feel that there's going to be enough time for the commission to act their ideas to complete that document before Thanksgiving recess?
I think some of this should be straightforward to them if we recommend changes in sectors, right?
Yeah.
For instance, and moving goals around or changing goal titles. That's not hard. I really think my own opinion is we need to get in the new items that we want to get in. And then in terms of changes to the bottom 20, I think it's actually going to be more, we should talk about it when the three of us get together tomorrow, but I think there may be more challenges. It's not going to be as straight up slam dunk. Yeah.
That's
I think
fair.
you need to focus on the meat.
Yeah.
I think it's less important as to where it goes versus it's in there. Right, so in terms of moving sector to sector, I think as long as the goal is in there, I think that's what's more important.
Good point.
What sector it's in.
Yeah, all right, well, let's focus on it that way. I like that.
And I'll put a cascade of questions together.
Okay,
tomorrow
perfect.
morning, okay, and then you guys can
Perfect.
add or delete or whatever you want. Okay,
Okay,
yeah,
wow.
thanks for hanging in there.
Oh,
You pulled me.
All right, well, thank you. So
He's deciding
so
on.
we need to vote on adjourning before we lose the quorum.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, all in
I
favor?
are a team on these things, huh, Mike?
All right, thank you all.